It's taken me a while to realize that less is more when it comes to outdoor gear. If you're carrying too much stuff, the stuff just gets in the way, rather than enhancing whatever activity you're engaged in. Whether you're sailing, paddling, fishing, you're probably better off getting the job done with less stuff. Backpackers spend a lot of time getting their load down to the bare essentials and making it as light and minimal as possible, and that makes a lot of sense when you consider you're carrying all that weight on your back. That's going to affect performance, obviously, and enjoyment. When it comes to a small boat like a canoe or kayak or my 12-foot sail and oar skiff, weight is generally not a big concern. Typically, you have enough capacity to carry whatever you want. It's definitely possible to get overloaded, and that's more of an issue when we're talking about an extended camping trip or even just an overnight camping trip out of a small boat. In this video, I'm concerned with a single day's outing, maybe a full day, up to even 8 or 10 hours if you want. Typically, my day outings would probably average 5 to 7 hours, I would say, on the water. I choose to pack minimally in my small boats just for the sake of decluttering. I just find boating to be a more enjoyable experience that way. As always, I'm just sharing the way I do things and what works for me on my local waters. Obviously, the gear you take with you is going to be very dependent on your specific location and conditions. For the brand new boater, maybe even someone that's preparing for a river float trip, this will definitely give you some ideas and get you started on just the bare bones essentials, what you need to bring along. And for the more experienced, you may notice some things you could add or some things you could do without in your own kit. So this is what I carry for warm weather boating. In Kentucky and Tennessee, I would consider warm weather maybe from the beginning of May to really the end of October. When it comes to the colder months, I still like to get out on the water. In some ways, I actually enjoy it a lot more. I'm not a big fan of the heat, and it's also nice there's just nobody out during late fall and winter. During the colder season, my kit looks quite a bit different. I have some more survival-oriented items, warming layers, and stuff like that, and I'll probably go over that in another video. So it would be possible, especially if you have a lot of internal built-in storage, just to get the gear you want and leave it in your boat all the time. I find in practice there's a lot of reasons you wouldn't want to do that. So my system is totally portable. It's divided up into 3 parts. A PFD, a big tote, and a soft cooler. And one of the nice things about this system is that it's very portable. I can take the same gear with me and shuffle it around to whatever boat I happen to be using, whether it's my tandem kayak, my fiberglass O'Day Osprey, my 15-foot wooden skiff, or my 12-foot wooden skiff. Even if I'm going on a float trip and renting a canoe, say in Missouri or somewhere on a river, I would take the exact same gear with me. And the nice thing about that is I don't have to think about anything or worry about anything. I already know what I have and I know where everything is. I'll start with the PFD because that's probably the most important piece of gear. You'll notice that I'm basically always wearing a life jacket in all of my videos. You'll occasionally see me without it back in a very tiny, shallow creek. I'm definitely an advocate of the PFD, and you should definitely have one for your passengers no matter what, if it's your boat, but I'm not an absolutist about it. I think people can make up their own minds and decide what their acceptable level of risk is. That said, you should have a good PFD that fits you, and you should wear it, especially if you're new to boating, and especially if you're using a small boat like the ones depicted on my channel. It's really important that when you buy a PFD, you get the right size and the right type, and most outfitters will have a sizing chart to help you with that. And I would say actually, you need to put that thing on and swim with it and see what it's like to swim with it and make sure that it's actually buoyant enough to float you. That's a good idea to do with any gear that your life may potentially depend on. Test it, actually get out and use it, and have some knowledge and understanding about it. My vest is an MTI Trident, and I do really like it. I have swam in it and tested it. It floats me good, and I trust it. It's very well made. I think it's made with some type of Cordura fabric or something similar. It's a really nice vest. Some people may consider this to be on the expensive side. Some people may consider it to be on the cheap side. It is very slim and comfortable and well made. There's a few things that I always carry on the vest that are generally useful, but are also oriented more towards rescue and emergency situations. The Trident comes with a whistle that's pretty good. It's plenty loud, and that's actually attached to the vest with a little piece of shock cord, and the whistle has a clip on it too. There are for sure better knives you could get for this purpose that are specifically made to cut ropes and rigging, but I'm just using a folder that I happen to have that I've had forever. I think it's a SOG brand. I always like to have a knife in general just for utility purposes, but it's also really important to have in order to free yourself or another person who may happen to be tangled up in ropes in the event of a capsize or whatever. And even if you're just paddling an aluminum canoe that doesn't even have a bow line attached to it, you may think there's no possibility of that. Well, there can be a lot of different random ropes and lines and things like that in various waterways that you may not be aware of. Someone may be swimming and get tangled up or something like that. It has these two mesh zipper pockets on the front of the vest, and then there's another just open pocket behind that. A pair of sunglasses fits really nicely in that mesh pocket, and I don't always keep them there, but sunglasses are definitely one thing you want to have any time of year, because I think most people who have spent any time on or near the water know how bright it can get, and it can be blinding. I think the worst is probably a sunny day where a little bit of cloud cover moves in just enough to make the sky white, and then you have the reflection of the sun off the water also reflecting off the clouds, and that can just be unbearable. It makes recording video pretty rough too. You'll probably notice some footage I end up with that's just bright and washed out, and there's really nothing I can do about it when it's that bad. In the left pocket I have a Bic lighter and some little cut up pieces of bicycle inner tube that I use as fire starters, and also carry one of those reflective Mylar emergency blankets. I used to think those things were kind of a joke until I actually tested one, and I realized they can warm you up really fast. And of course it's just a big reflective panel you can unfold, and that can also be really useful for signaling. That's about it for the PFD. The Tote is where I keep the bulk of my gear, and the Tote itself you can actually purchase from cumberlandrover.com, and this is one that I made here. It's wax canvas. It's got one big open pocket, two side pockets on the outside, and it has a couple of little pieces of cord ears up at the top that you can attach anything with a clip. I've used this tote many times, and you'll probably see it on most of my videos. The most important items in my tote are probably the hat, the canteen, and the rain jacket. If you're not experienced with boating, you may not realize what it's like to be constantly exposed to the sun and the elements, and that's where the hat comes in. The main thing it's going to do is keep the sun off your neck and shoulders and back, and it's also going to keep the sun out of your eyes. A lot of people have asked about my bucket hat. It's actually an Under Armour brand. I've just sewed my Cumberland Rover patch over the logo. I like the fact that it's made of a really light material, and the brim is bigger than most bucket hats. Probably the worst thing about it is the color. If you can see, the inside color is the original dark navy, but the outside has faded to almost light gray. Really was never very effective as a dark colored hat. You want this type of hat to be a light khaki, light gray, or white even, in order to better reflect sunlight away from your head and away from your body rather than absorb it. I keep the 40-ounce stainless canteen in the tote, usually on the top and ready to drink from, and I'll always have at least one of the 32-ounce Nalgene bottles in the soft cooler. Sometimes I may carry two, just depending on how hot it is and how long I'm going to be out. Water is obviously very important, and it's better to have too much of it than not enough. I've recently started carrying this Sawyer filter, and you have to have a bag for it as well. It's a Sawyer squeeze, and you know, that just kind of gives me peace of mind because I'm exploring some pretty remote areas by myself. A lot of these places, there's nothing but woods, and Certain times of year, there's no one else out there. It's just me, and I'm alone. Don't always have cell phone signal. So just having one of the most basic tenets of survival, knowing I have a way to get clean water, is a good idea. My rain jacket is just kind of a plain old rain jacket that's meant to be packable. It's got a nice big hood. You can cinch it down at the neck. You can cinch it down on the waist. And the most important thing about it is that I've tested it and I know that it'll keep me dry. Even during summer, if you get caught in a heavy downpour for an extended amount of time, you may not get hypothermia, but you may get pretty cold and you may be miserable. Separate from whatever chips and sandwich type of situation that I have for my lunch, I'll usually carry a Cliff Bar or two or something like that. I'm really more of a meat and potatoes guy. I don't consume very much sugar or grains or bread in my daily life. You know, if I happen to be in a situation where I'm rowing for a long time, maybe further than I meant to, sometimes it's good just to have that athletic boost. This haversack is my design, of course, and it's wax canvas. It's also available on cumberlandrover.com, and I've really been liking this thing. My idea in making this was to have something that I could fold up flat and keep it in the bottom of my tote. So when I land somewhere, or like when I get to my farthest extent up the creek and beach the boat, that's when I'm going to get in my tote and get out my haversack, and I'll put in my canteen, my water filter, maybe something to eat, camera gear, whatever I need, and that's what I'm going to use to get me up the creek on foot. It's just one simple compartment, wax canvas, and it has an adjustable shoulder strap, and I have used and abused this one, and it's still going strong. I keep this little mini zipper pouch in one of the side pockets, and it has a redundant fire kit with a Bic lighter and another little piece of inner tube, and I also have a very tiny Swiss Army knife. It has a redundant knife blade, a toothpick, and tweezers. The tweezers can be very important to have. I'll usually also keep some acetaminophen and some antibiotic ointment and Benadryl in the event that someone should get stung or something like that. The one thing not pictured here that you may want to consider, you probably do want to consider, is just sort of a basic hygiene kit. Even just for a day outing, it might be a good idea to have like a pack of dude wipes, maybe some toilet paper, that type of thing. So I'm a very casual fisherman. I enjoy fishing every once in a while. I don't always carry tackle with me, but when I do, it's basically what you see here. Extremely minimal. I have some small bait hooks. That's usually something that me and Sydney use when we're fishing off the dock. We'll fish with night crawlers or crickets. Actually, my dad likes to fish with crickets, and you will catch a ton of bluegill on crickets, but they're kind of a pain. I'll carry some small lead-headed jigs and just some little split shot lead, and I like to use swivels. The great thing about this telescoping rod, and it's a very cheap one, but it's worked for the fishing I've done this summer. The nice thing about it, it actually fits in the tote, and as long as you have your hook secured correctly, the hook's not going to hook anything in the tote. And you really don't want a loose hook around any type of cloth, obviously, because it can really tear stuff up. The needle nose pliers actually stay in the tote all the time. They're great for fishing, obviously, but they're also great for things that you have no idea that you're going to need them for just yet. They also have wire cutters built in. So maybe a cooler isn't absolutely necessary. I enjoy some beers at room temperature, but when it's 85 to 90 degrees in the blazing sun, the only beer is cold beer. And also having cold water and electrolyte drinks, it goes a long way to keeping you cool. I bought this cheap Igloo soft cooler this spring, and it's held up very well. I prefer the soft cooler because I can squish it down and stow it under the thwart, the middle seat that I row from in the middle of the skiff. It's just nice to be able to keep everything out of the way and keep the boat clear. A hard cooler, of course, is a lot more efficient, especially a good one, but they're gonna take up a lot more space. On an overnight trip or longer, having a good efficient cooler might be more of an issue, but for my day outings of a few hours typically, you know, my beer and my sandwich has always stayed cold. The cooler has an open side pocket where I'll usually keep maybe some dry snacks like crackers or something just for something extra. And I also always keep some sort of a trash bag in that pocket. It's really sad the amount of trash that I see in some areas on some really beautiful wild places where you don't want to see that kind of thing. So I do what I can not to contribute to that. So there you have it. That's a pretty detailed overview of what I'm carrying with me on my day explorations. When it comes to sleeping out for a night, I'm carrying pretty much everything the same, plus a big dry bag with my tent, clothes, and a big camping mattress, plus some extra food. So obviously context matters. I can give you some ideas, but you have to consider your specific waters, your specific situation and conditions, and your own personal needs when you're figuring out what to haul along with you in your small boat. Pennants are now available at cumberlandrover.com. Historically flown for signal purposes, a pennant is that indescribable something that your boat is missing. They can help you read the wind, increase visibility of your small craft, and they just look cool, fluttering from the masthead or yard of a lug sail. You can have any color you want, as long as it's bright red. I have 2 styles of pennant now available at cumberlandrover.com.